They thought I would stay quiet. They didn't know I had proof. I smiled back at my sister across the table because the money was missing and only one of us knew where it went. The dinner was my sister's idea. She said Dad had been stressed lately and that a nice family night would help. I almost said no. Something in my chest felt tight the moment she called. But then I told myself I was overthinking, like they always said I was. The restaurant was quiet, a private dining room, white tablecloths, soft lighting, the kind of place where everything looks perfect on the surface. My sister arrived first. She smiled the second she saw me, wide, confident, a little too practiced. She hugged me like we hadn't argued a few months ago, like nothing had happened. "Relax," she whispered. "It's just dinner." I nodded. I smiled back. It was the same calm smile I'd learned to wear when I knew something wasn't right, but didn't want to give anyone the satisfaction of seeing it on my face. They thought I would stay quiet. They didn't know I had proof. I smiled back at my sister across the table because the money was missing and only one of us knew where it went. The dinner was my sister's idea. She said Dad had been stressed lately and that a nice family night would help. I almost said no. Something in my chest felt tight the moment she called. But then I told myself I was overthinking, like they always said I was. The restaurant was quiet, a private dining room, white tablecloths, soft lighting, the kind of place where everything looks perfect on the surface. My sister arrived first. She smiled the second she saw me, wide, confident, a little too practiced. She hugged me like we hadn't argued a few months ago, like nothing had happened. "Relax," she whispered. "It's just dinner." I nodded. I smiled back. It was the same calm smile I'd learned to wear when I knew something wasn't right, but didn't want to give anyone the satisfaction of seeing it on my face. Our parents arrived a few minutes later. Dad looked lighter than usual. Mom looked straight at me. Not my dress, not my smile. My eyes. Like she was checking if I planned to cause a problem. Dinner started. Small talk, old stories, safe jokes. My sister carried the conversation effortlessly. Every time someone paused, she filled the space. Every time I stayed quiet, she glanced at me, subtle, quick, like a reminder. Don't. Dessert menus hadn't even been opened when the tone shifted. Mom leaned closer to me, her voice low, practiced. "You've been quiet all night," she said again. "Is something wrong?" I met her eyes and smiled. "No, I'm fine." She studied my face like she didn't believe me. My sister jumped in smoothly. "She's probably tired. She always gets like this when she's stressed." Always. That word landed harder than anything else she'd said. Dad nodded. "You work too much," he said to me, kindly. "You worry too much." I let it pass. That was the pattern. Concern wrapped around dismissal. The waiter returned. My sister ordered dessert for the table without asking anyone. "Chocolate cake," she said. "We'll share." She glanced at me when she said it. I didn't look away. When the plates arrived, Mom touched my wrist. "Sweetheart," she said, "let's not turn tonight into something it's not." I kept my voice calm. "What do you think it is?" She paused, just long enough. "Drama," my sister said softly. "We're trying to avoid drama." There it was. I took a small bite of cake. It tasted too sweet. I swallowed slowly. "I'm not starting anything," I said. "I haven't said a word." "That's exactly how it starts," my sister replied, still smiling. "You go quiet, then you explode later." Dad shifted in his chair. "Your sister's just worried," he said. "We all are." I nodded, because arguing would only prove their point.
Mom changed the subject. Vacation plans, holidays, anything.
I excused myself to the restroom, not because I needed to go, but because I needed space to think without their eyes on me. The hallway was empty. Soft music followed me from the dining room. I stood by the sink and took a slow breath, looking at my reflection. Calm. That's what they expected. I pulled out my phone. I didn't open the bank app right away. I opened my messages. 3 days ago, I'd texted the bank to ask a general question. Nothing accusatory, nothing emotional. They'd replied with a standard confirmation message, including the exact balance update my sister had just mentioned. I checked the timestamp again. 3 days, late afternoon. I locked my phone and stared at the wall for a second. There were only 2 ways she could know that number. Either she had direct access, or someone with access had already told her. Either way, it meant one thing. This wasn't a misunderstanding. I went back to the table. Conversation stopped for half a second when I sat down. Not dramatically, just enough to notice. Mom smiled first, Dad followed. My sister was the last to look up. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Perfect." The waiter returned with the check folder and placed it near Dad. My sister reached for it automatically, then caught herself and pulled her hand back. Too fast. Too familiar. Dad didn't notice. Mom noticed but pretended not to. I watched quietly. Then something unexpected happened. Dad frowned at the receipt. Strange, this total seems off. The waiter left. The check stayed on the table. No one rushed to touch it this time. Dad cleared his throat. "It's probably nothing," he said, but he didn't sound convinced. Mom nodded too quickly. "Yes, just a bank thing." My sister laughed again, softer now, careful. "Exactly. We're making a big deal out of nothing." I looked at my plate. Then I looked up. "I have a question," I said. It wasn't loud, it wasn't emotional, but it landed. Everyone froze, not dramatically, just enough to notice. Even the clinking from the next table felt louder. My sister tilted her head. "About what?" "About the account," I said calmly. Mom's hand tightened around her napkin. Dad leaned back in his chair, eyes on me now. I kept my voice steady. "You mentioned a balance earlier," I said, looking at my sister. "Can you remind me when you last checked it?" Her smile didn't disappear, but it didn't move either. "I don't remember," she said. "Why?" I nodded, like that made sense. "That's interesting," I said, "because the number you mentioned only updated 3 days ago." No one reached for dessert after that. The table felt smaller, like the walls had leaned in. Dad finally broke the silence. "Let's just be clear," he said, looking at both of us. "No one's accusing anyone. We just want to understand." My sister nodded quickly. "Exactly, this is being blown out of proportion." I leaned back slightly in my chair, still calm, still quiet. "I agree," I said. "That's why I checked with the bank." Mom's head snapped toward me. "What do you mean?" "I mean," I said gently, "I asked them a few general questions last week, nothing serious." My sister stiffened. Barely, but I saw it. "I was told I overthink," I said, "so I wanted facts." Mom's voice lowered. "And what did they say?" I paused. Not for drama, for control. "They said only 2 people accessed the account after the last update." Silence again. Dad's brow furrowed. "2?" he said. "Yes, Mom and 1 other device." My sister's hand moved toward her. I didn't rush. I let the quiet do its work first. Then I turned my phone over. I didn't slide it across the table. I didn't raise my voice. I simply angled the screen so Dad could see. "Login history," I said. "That's all." Dad leaned forward. His eyes moved slowly. Dates, times, locations. Mom stood up slightly from her chair, as if she needed a better view. My sister stayed still, too still. "That device," Dad said, pointing, "that's yours, isn't it?" My sister opened her mouth. I didn't rush. I let the quiet do its work first. Then I turned my phone over. I didn't slide it across the table. I didn't raise my voice. I simply angled the screen so Dad could see. Login history, I said. That's all. Dad leaned forward. His eyes moved slowly. Dates, times, locations. Mom stood up slightly from her chair, as if she needed a better view. My sister stayed still, too still. That device, Dad said, pointing, that's yours, isn't it? My sister opened her mouth, closed it. It could be, she started. I mean, sometimes. Mom cut in softly. Your phone was replaced last month. Another pause. The room felt suspended. Dad straightened. So why does the activity show transfers made after midnight from your device? No one spoke. I kept my hands folded in my lap, my breathing even. I didn't accuse, I said quietly. No one spoke for a long moment after that. The truth had landed, and it didn't need anything added to it. Dad was the first to move. He closed the check folder and slid it to the side, like the dinner itself no longer mattered. We'll talk about this at home, he said, his voice calm but final. My sister looked up sharply. Not here, she said. Please. Dad didn't raise his voice. That's exactly why, he replied. Mom wiped her hands on her napkin, even though they weren't dirty. We trusted you, she said quietly. We defended you. My sister's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. I was going to put it back, she said. I swear. I finally spoke again. I believe you, I said, but that doesn't change what happened. She looked at me then, really looked at me. Not with superiority, not with control, with something like resignation. Dad stood up. The account will be frozen tonight, he said. Access will be reviewed. Separately. No one argued. Mom nodded. We'll handle the rest later. The house felt different after that night. Quieter. Careful. The account was frozen the next morning. Dad handled it himself this time. No delegating, no assumptions. Passwords were changed. Access was limited. My sister didn't argue. She avoided eye contact for days. When she finally spoke, it wasn't to defend herself. It was to ask what would happen next. Dad was calm. We'll fix what we can, he said, but trust isn't automatic anymore. Mom stopped calling me dramatic, stopped telling me to let things go for the sake of peace. She didn't apologize outright, but she checked in, quietly, respectfully. And that was enough. My sister moved out a month later, not in anger, not in shame, just distance.